The scariest thing about this movie for me is not so much the claustrophobia, but the fact that you had to do math problems to figure your way out of it and save yourselves. I'd have been dead in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah. This movie is truly one of the very best, like top 5 horror films of the 2000s. It's such a great movie.
It didn't seem to be that warm. I mean, Rex was wearing a long sleeve sweater, and every second guy that came past, if he didn't have his shirt off, he decided, I'm going to take my shirt off.
Welcome. This is Fright Club Live from Gateway Film Center in Columbus, Ohio, on the campus of The Ohio State University. Welcome. Come on in. Yeah, we are back live. Actually, we were live. Were we live last time? I got confused because we were so in deep here at Nightmares Film Festival, and we did one live. But I think that was the last time.
It was.
Was it not? All
yes,
right.
it was.
See? I'm getting back at it. She, by the way, is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we are from madwolf.com. And we're back on the normal schedule now.
Right.
Feeling a little bit normal. And thanks to everybody that came out last time for Nightmares Film Festival. That was special. It was a great event anyway, a great film festival, and it was great to be a part of it.
Yeah, we've wanted to do that for years, to be able to, do our Fright Club in the middle of that glorious festival, and really very grateful to Jason Tostovan and Chris Hamill for making that happen, and also for letting us show our short film at the end. So that was fun. We did Best Friends in Horror. That was our countdown. We lost, by the way, Pint to Joe. She abandoned us after that. She said it's been a good run, but we didn't have Shaun of the Dead on that list, so she's out. So we'll miss her.
No, we're gonna rope her back in somehow.
Then we showed our movie, which was super fun.
Yeah,
and we also, I just want to real quick thank anybody and everybody, and there are a lot of Fright Clubbers who supported our Indiegogo to turn that short into a feature.
Obstacle Corpse.
Thank you very much if you contributed, and to anybody listening, the Fright Clubbers listening, thank you so much.
Yeah, we hope to start shooting in May.
Yes.
So onward and upward for Obstacle Corpse. Normally we have the movies planned out months in advance here, but obviously things have been upended a little bit by current events and world events. But we think we have something for next month that's going to be Christmas and holiday related.
Yes.
Don't know for sure.
Yes. Well, I feel pretty confident we will show a holiday film.
Holiday horror.
A holiday horror film, yeah. But exactly which one is, we were hoping to know by today, but we don't have it nailed down yet, unfortunately.
No, but it should be
it'll be festive and also bloody.
A Christmas extravaganza next month. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. We're back tonight with one that has become a favorite, and it's interesting. We were talking to some people earlier at Happy Hour. Michael, in particular, has seen the remake of this movie, but not the original. So
and that was
it's
a
big
deal when it came out because it was the same director, but also because it had a pretty big cast, especially for the year it came out, which was the early '90s. It had Sandra Bullock and Kiefer Sutherland and Jeff Bridges, and that's a solid cast.
Yeah.
And Jeff Bridges, I would never sneeze at. I mean, he's great in everything, but when you see the original, as often happens, I think, when foreign films are remade for American audiences, some punches were pulled.
Oh yeah.
But also, as much as I love Jeff Bridges, he just doesn't come close to the lead performance in this movie. It is just,
I agree.
It's just perfection. This lead performance in this movie.
And the one we're talking about, of course, is the original title is Spoorloos,
yes,
or The Vanishing. So I definitely want to get your opinions when the movie's done. So please, if you'd like, come down after, and we'll get you on the podcast talking about your reactions to this film, and of course, if you've seen the remake, maybe to compare and contrast both of them. So looking forward to that afterward. But the theme we're talking about is claustrophobia.
Yes, we are. Because one of us is profoundly claustrophobic. And it's funny, one of the movies on this list, before it came out in trailers, and you don't know what trailer you're going to see, I would have to leave. Like, I couldn't make it through the trailer of one of these movies. I would have to leave the building and then come back. And I don't think George knew just how claustrophobic I was until I had to have an MRI. I don't know, many years ago, I had to have an MRI. And, they told me I'd be fine. Oh, you'll be fine. It'll be fine. And I did not do it on purpose. You start going back, and my hands just reach and would, slide me back out.
Yeah, it was ugly.
And he and the doctor were like, just don't do that. And I'd be like, okay. And then it would just happen again. So anyway, I didn't have it. I think I'm fine, though.
I think you're far from alone. I think a lot of people have a problem with that. And I wondered, because I had my first MRI after that, a couple years after that, and I wondered how I would be. And it didn't bother me only because I could see light out. All I had to do was look down, and I saw light out by my feet. So for some reason, that just calmed me.
You didn't immediately assume that somebody was going to close that off and you were going to be trapped inside that tube until you died?
No, I didn't immediately assume that.
So it was just me.
But yeah, I think a lot of people have that, and it's understandable. You're in that big tube.
It's horrible.
Yeah. So we're going to explore that.
We are.
We're going to pick that scab with some of our favorites about claustrophobia, and you've got a pretty good list here of movies that maybe get into the neighborhood,
yes,
but didn't quite make our final five.
Yes,
here.
these are movies that bother me because they make me feel very claustrophobic. And there are some where it's just the entire film, right, just has this whole pervasive feel, like Pontypool, which we showed here not too long ago, and they can't leave the radio station, or The Thing, right? It's as much as it's like this big open expanse. They're so trapped there, and then, the closer they get, the hairier they all are, the more trapped and confined you feel. High Life is like that for me. Misery, Devil, of course, which is all inside. It's not a good movie,
elevator.
But it's all inside an elevator.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in an elevator with Satan. As Above, So Below. Also not a very good movie, but very claustrophobic, for me anyway. And then anything in a submarine, but in particular Below and Das Boot. Oh, my God. Plus, you just think to yourself, it just probably smelled so bad in there.
I knew you were going to say that.
Blindness.
Yeah.
That made me feel very claustrophobic as well.
Yeah, especially the more and more people that got put in the compound.
Yeah, if you remember that one, Julianne Moore is not blind, but she pretends she is so she can live with her husband. Yeah, it's nasty.
It's dark about human nature. But,
yeah,
so I can see that.
Quarantine, Repulsion, there are a whole bunch. And then there were a few that have just like a scene or two that are really very claustrophobic. Shadow in the Cloud. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's a very B movie with Chloe Grace Moretz.
Just from what, last year?
Yeah, just from last year. And it's not bad. I mean, if you go into it, like, it's very B movie,
sort of
monster
a creature
movie. I thought
feature.
it was pretty fun,
yeah,
but
I thought it was fun.
It's got a couple of scenes that really made me jump. House of Usher, the old Vincent Price, that'll do it. Pit and the Pendulum, also the old Vincent Price. Kind of the same thing, really. And then The Lady Vanishes. So those are just a few that have it, but these next five are the ones that about did me in.
No, I think these are solid. It'd be hard to argue with these for claustrophobic horror movies. I don't think Pint of Joe is going to have a reason to leave us again because we left something out. So we've got our 5 favorite claustrophobic horror movies, and let's start with one from 2001. I cannot believe this movie is this old.
I know.
Crazy. 4 teenagers at a British private school secretly uncover and explore the depths of a sealed underground hole created decades ago as a possible bomb shelter. It's The Hole.
How would you like to go to the best private party of your life? Me, you, Mike, and Jeff. Absolutely extracurricular.
All right, I'm in.
Those don't just slam themselves locked.
How long before we're found?
You may not have caught that one. I mean, some of you are clearly too young to have ever seen that movie. But it's super, super creepy. Thora Birch, who I already loved from Ghost World. Thora Birch is the lead in this movie, and she and her best friend, played by Keira Knightley, convinced 2 boys that instead of going on holiday with the rest of their boarding school, that they should sneak away to this bomb shelter. And then, of course, they get locked in and nobody knows that they're in there. And it's harrowing. This movie is so harrowing. But I also think that it's got this very wicked layer to it, and in particular to Thora Birch's character. The performance is amazing, and I've always been sad that she didn't sort of go on to be like a staple of film, because the 3 movies that I know her for, those 2 and American Beauty, she's just wonderful.
Yeah, this is just 2 years after American Beauty, and this is really the reason that the movie got the funding. With her starring in it was the reason they got the funding.
Because Keira Knightley, she was like 2 years away from doing Bend It Like Beckham, so she was not
it was her
big
movie
yet.
debut, I think, Keira Knightley here. But Thora Birch at the time was still an it girl, so she was the reason this got going. And you're right, she kind of seemed like she had an extreme future, and then her co-star in Ghost World, Scarlett Johansson, just blew right past her.
And everybody else.
Yeah, and everybody else. And interesting, this is based on a novel, and the guy that wrote the novel wrote it when he was 18 years old.
Yeesh.
Yeah, just not long after he left school. But anytime you're talking about being stuck in a hole, that's just freaky to start with.
It is. It is. And it's funny because there's a movie, it's not very claustrophobic because it's an open hole, but John in the Hole, which is a really weird movie. I suppose it's a horror film. It's just kind of sort of really weird, but we got to see it here when they had Sundance here. And it actually made me remember this film. They're very, very different, but there's something about not being able to get out, whether it's open or whether it's closed, just the knowledge that I'm looking up there and that's where I need to be and I'm down here and there's nothing I can do about it. It's so alarming.
Yeah, because even if you're not packed in real tight, just the fact that you can't get out makes it extra claustrophobic.
Yeah.
And the longer that goes on, the more claustrophobic that it feels. And this one certainly qualifies from 2001, The Hole, number 5 on our list of claustrophobic horror. And moving up to number 4, I think we've talked about this movie. At least
I'm sure we have.
couple
This
of
is a
occasions.
favorite, yeah.
Definitely one to it's fun to keep going back to. This is from 1997, and 6 complete strangers with widely varying personalities are involuntarily placed in an endless maze containing deadly traps. It's called Cube.
Does anybody remember how they got here?
Why would they throw innocent people in here? Are we being punished?
There's a way in here, so there's gotta be a way out.
Do you think they'd go to all the trouble to build this thing if we could just walk out?
Take a good long look around. Because I got a feeling it's looking at us.
We have about 3 days without food and water before we're too weak to move.
I just want to wake up.
You're not getting out of here.
Yes, we are! There is no way out of here!
We need to get around the traps.
They're identified by prime numbers.
Figure it out.
I can't!
I'm not dying in a rat maze!
We have the key. The cube is us.
The scariest thing about this movie for me is not so much the claustrophobia, but the fact that you had to do math problems to figure your way out of it and save yourselves. I'd have been dead in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, we'd have just given ourselves up. Oh, prime numbers? Kill us now.
This one
We're
does.
just going to wait for the swords.
This one does a lot with comparatively little, really. It was shot in 20 days, most of it on a handheld camera, and they do a great job of making these very minimal number of sets seem like a lot of sets as they going through what feels like a much more expansive cube that they're stuck in, and they fall victim to these elaborate traps, sort of Saw-like. That's
the thing. I always feel like this is the movie that Saw hoped to be. One of the things I love about this movie, Vincenzo Natali did this movie, and then he's a Canadian, and he went on to do Splice, which I also think is an underrated, you're going there kind of a film.
Oh,
but
yeah.
There's
It's
nothing,
got that.
Yeah, it does. But nothing like this. I mean, this movie is so incredibly clever and just nerve-jangling. But the guy who's the star of the trailer, who's my favorite character in the movie, he doesn't have any lines, the bald guy, right? I don't know if you've seen this movie, but the way he dies is beautiful. It's perfect. But he is Julian Richings, who starred in Anything for Jackson. Which makes me realize how long ago 1997 was, because he plays the grandpa in the really excellent sort of possession movie Anything for Jackson that just came out this year. And he's just this sweet old grandpa / Satanist. But it's so funny for me to have remembered in watching this trailer. I'm like, oh my God, that's him.
Yeah.
But
life comes at you fast.
It does. It does. It came at him fast.
Oh, yeah.
And he didn't make it.
Yeah, and this has the director, as you mentioned, Vincenzo Natali. One of the first things he said that when he went to the editing bay, one of the first things that he took out from this movie was a final moment that shows what is outside the cube. And he decided, no, I'm striking that right now. And I think that was a good decision.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things. It's a really clever movie, and the way that they give you these certain specific types of characters, and you realize as the movie wears on that they're going to explain to you that sort of the traditional horror trope characters are the opposite of what they seem. But the capper is how terrifying it is that you would have given up before or at least for me, I'd have just given up and died. And it's not often that I watch a movie where I think I would let the zombies eat me. You know what I mean? Like usually I'm like, let's go. And this one I'm like, just sit it out. You're dead.
Well, again, it's the math. It's the math involved. And all of the characters are named after famous prisons.
That's right.
For those that know about famous prisons. And their mannerisms, their characteristics reflect what the prisons are known for as well. So, yeah.
Wow.
A lot of thought in there.
Canadian prisons or like real prisons?
No, I think real prisons. For instance, Rennes is a French jail that pioneered many of today's prison policies. So,
Okay.
yeah, serious business. For Cube, number 4 on our list of claustrophobic horror from way back in the Stone Age, otherwise known as 1997. Moving up to number 3, this might be the most claustrophobic on the list. Paul is a U.S. truck driver working in Iraq. After an attack by a group of Iraqis, he wakes up to find he's buried alive inside a coffin with only a lighter and a cell phone. It's a race against time to escape this claustrophobic death trap. Ryan Reynolds in Buried.
So this is the trailer I couldn't make it through. I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to watch you.
Yes, 911.
I'm from Hastings, Michigan. I'm a driver for CRT. My convoy was ambushed. I'm buried in a coffin in the ground, and I need help. Please send help. I'm begging you.
How did you end up in the coffin, sir?
I was put here.
You American?
Yeah.
5 million money to 9 more to stay. Buried like dog. United States Farmers Day?
I'm an American citizen. My convoy was attacked, and I'm being held for ransom. I need $5 million, or I'll be left to die here. These threats are real and will be followed through on.
I just have a few questions for you, Mr. Conroy.
You gotta be kidding me.
It's important that I get this information. It'll help me
Hold on. Wait. How do you know my name? What's going on right now?
So you thought it was just another bad, dark trailer? No, it's dark for a reason. And do you know what Ryan Reynolds needed? He needed the cruel tutelage of Pai Mei.
He did, to get out of this.
That's right.
The entire, he is the only human in the cast. You do see, I think, someone else's face on a phone video, and then you hear other voices, but it's just him in the coffin, and that's it for the entire movie. And that is, man, that's minimal. That's minimalistic, and that is claustrophobic.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's, and he's not a small dude. I mean, he's very long. You can tell that his knees are bent, like he takes up more space. The way this film is shot is really, I was very impressed by it. The way that they edit it and, change the position so that it doesn't become tedious watching it, but at the same time you feel very, very cramped. And again, the way that they use light with his camera, with his phone and with that lighter, I think it's spooky and beautiful and terrifying. There are moments in the film where I think they stretch credibility in trying to create a 90-minute film out of this, right? There are a couple things that happen. You're like, oh, that's also going to happen? Come on. For real? But on the whole, I mean, I thought it was, and I can't say that prior to watching this movie, I thought much of Ryan Reynolds as an actor. I mean, I thought he was pretty and funny, but I don't know that I thought of him as much of an actor. But he's very impressive. I mean, that's tough to be the only person on screen for 90 minutes and to still, compel your attention the whole time.
Yeah, this is very different from any of the roles really that he's been famous for. And it's director Rodrigo Cortés shot it in 17 days. In a Barcelona studio. And before it was made, the screenplay was featured a year earlier, the 2009 Blacklist, which was a list of the most liked unmade scripts of the year. So it had a lot of love for the script before it actually got made. And Ryan Reynolds himself suffered a bit of claustrophobia on this. In fact, he said that the last day of shooting was, quote, unlike anything I experienced in my life, and I never, ever want to experience that again, close quote. So I can only imagine being stuck in there. And if you've seen Deadpool and Deadpool 2, both films mock, as Deadpool pretty much mocks everything, they mock what he had to go through in this movie. If you have any sort of real claustrophobia, as Hope said, this could trigger it.
Oh,
This
it's
could
really hard to watch.
Trigger it.
It is really hard to watch.
Because it's not just as one scene here or there. It's the entire movie.
You never leave that casket.
Never do. And it's freaky. 2010, Buried. Ooh, I'm checking the clock. We got to get moving.
Yeah.
Because we got a film to show. So let's move. Oh, and one more note about that. This movie, Buried, Cortés said that some of his inspirations when making this were Hitchcock films Rope and Lifeboat, an inspiration, which I can definitely see. So let's move up to number 2. A caving expedition, hint, hint, goes horribly wrong as the explorers become trapped and ultimately become pursued by a strange breed of predators, the Descent.
There's only one way out of this chamber, and that's down the pipe.
This is not good, guys.
Can we get out of here? Which way?
I don't know.
Is there anybody there? Hello?
Longtime Fright Clubbers know we love this movie
We
for
do.
so many reasons. But
Fucking Juno.
Oh, Juno. But I think this might have the one moment that bothered me most out of any of these claustrophobic films. Because just the idea, just the thought of getting stuck trying to crawl through that little opening just freaks me the hell out.
Yes. And then
more so than an entire movie of seeing Ryan Reynolds trapped in a box. I mean, that just, can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, the whole movie is just terrifying. It's such a masterpiece. It's so scary. And, we watch a lot of horror films, and it's not that often that I watch one and I'm, like, equally exhilarated and just afraid. Like, this movie scared me, which I appreciate so much. I loved Neil Marshall's previous film, right, Dog Soldiers. It was great. It was very funny. It was super creepy. But this movie is one of the very best, like, top 5 horror films of the 2000s. It's such a great movie.
Yeah, and of course a lot of that has to do with when the movie makes its move to the monsters, the quote-unquote crawlers.
Oh, yeah.
And Marshall also kept them, what they looked like, kept that secret from the cast until the absolute last moment so that they would be justifiably freaked out, which was a great move, I think, because they do look so creepy. And the way he shoots them, he shot a lot of them at 18 frames per second for you tech heads, 18 frames per second with a 45-degree shutter to make them that staccato type of movement. It's just freaky all the way around. And once it makes that turn into a creature feature, man, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, it's amazing. And one of the other things I liked about it, and we can move on, but it's very similar in structure to a lot of, like, The Cave, to a lot of sort of Navy SEAL, sort of Black Ops kind of, military grade, not action films where and what I love about this is that it's just 5 human beings who are good at certain things and they're trapped inside of it, and you still think they have a shot at getting out, but, like, there's no, you feel more like you're one of them, which to me made it that much more claustrophobic. Then they're going to shoot their way out, or they've got training and skills, and then you sort of feel, I think, at a distance from the action. I thought that all the performances were great, and the fact that, like, the one lady is a school teacher and the other 2 are sisters who kind of bitch at each other all the time, it felt very authentic, which made it that much scarier to me.
And it's worth noting that it's all female. Well, after the very beginning, it's an all female cast that you didn't see much driving a horror film.
Right.
From 2005, it's The Descent, and it has, if you have seen it, it has alternate endings.
It does.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That if you're interested and you haven't seen, it might be worth checking out. But we don't want to spoil anything. We don't want to spoil anything about number 1 either, because that's the one we're going to see tonight from 1988. Rex and Saskia, a young couple in love, are on vacation. They stop at a busy service station, and Saskia is abducted. After 3 years and no sign of her, Rex begins receiving letters from the abductor, the original The Vanishing.
Vous l'avez violée, Saskia. Si elle est morte, je vais mourir moi aussi.
Okay, so how many people have already seen this original version? We got a few. Okay. I remember we originally rented this from Blockbuster back in the day.
We did.
And how did it get on our radar? Was it because of the remake?
I have a sixth sense about these things.
You do?
I do.
Wow.
We're not going to talk about why it's claustrophobic, though. We're going to wait and have you come down and talk to us about that after.
That's right. We don't want to spoil anything because there's a lot of people that haven't seen it. But please, after it's over, come down. We'd love to get your thoughts on it.
107 creepy minutes later.
Was anyone else impressed by Rex's handwriting?
It was really nice.
Very
lovely penmanship.
He had lovely penmanship. He did, especially when he was writing on a Polaroid picture, which is not easy. Just, some levity to lighten the mood after that movie, I think. It was really interesting to see it again because we hadn't seen it, or I hadn't seen it in years, to pick up different things. Well, just off the top, the main performance of the killer is stupendous.
Yes, I love that. I find it very alarming, this sequence, the early sequence when he's practicing and he trips and he doesn't shut his car door very cleanly, and you're like, oh, how awkward for him. Oh, I hate, it was very disturbing to me how sort of human that characterization was. I kind of wanted it not to be. Then later on, when you see how they met at the vending machine and he'd given up on this whole ridiculousness of faking it, And then you just were like, and it reminded me, years later of Silence of the Lambs, where it's just being nice. Just being like a nice, friendly human being is what is going to get us all murdered in the most horrible possible way.
Well, isn't that also the broken arm thing? Didn't Ted Bundy do that?
Yeah,
I think that was one of the things that
because
he used.
he thought kindness was the humanity's greatest weakness.
Yeah, and
so he preyed on it,
playing on somebody's sympathy. And then when Saskia, her last fatal mistake was seeing his family snapshot and immediately thinking, "Oh, then he must be
a good guy.
Be safe there." Yeah. Also thought it was fascinating how much they used the play-by-play of the Tour de France.
Yes.
Where it came into when it got down to being, I think the announcer called it a battle between two men or a battle of wits.
What's funny is that I do not recall that from having seen it previous times. This is the first time I noticed that.
Turns into a fascinating a battle of wits and a fascinating character study. Mainly of the killer, but then of their relationship once Rex meets up with him.
It's weirdly, my favorite scene in this movie is when he tries to murder what turns out to be his teenage daughter's volleyball coach, and she thinks he's just trying to pick somebody up.
Yeah.
And so she gives him the brilliant idea to just go murder a foreigner at a really busy gas station, and he's like, Eureka! And it's like, it was just such a funny thing. She just realized that he's trying to do something he's not supposed to do, and she assumes that it's, something sort of lurid, and she thinks she's just giving him like a good tip. Go pick up a prostitute at a gas station, and she winds up murdering poor Saskia.
And it's just more proof that every little step, even a setback like that, he uses it as part of his, since he's a scientist, his equation, part of his equation to finally get to the result that he wants. Yeah, it's fascinating. The other times where people don't do exactly what he is hoping them to do or expects them to do, and he's thrown off his game.
Or the best is when he sneezes, right?
Yeah, when he sneezes. Yeah.
It's another time where you're like almost alarmed that you feel. That's one of the things about it is it makes you feel empathetic to the murderer. Like, oh, I would totally do that. I would totally sneeze into my own chloroform and not be able to murder this poor lady trying to get in my car.
But every time he's thrown off his game just a little bit, it's okay. He just feeds it into the final equation where he's going to get it down to the result that he wants. And I also thought it was fascinating the outcome of his saving that little girl and then how he explained how he came to the habit that he has now. And then we talk about the remake, the American remake. You mentioned Jeff Bridges, who is a great actor. I just didn't care for his visualization of the character. He makes him too weird.
Yeah.
I like that this guy in this movie is more of a guy.
Super ordinary.
Yes.
Like completely non-threatening.
Yeah, but the fact that it is by the same director, though, and the director is Georges Sluizer, as far as pulling punches at the end in the American version, it makes more sense, I think, because it was an original alternate ending that he had for this version. So I guess normally you'd say if it was a different director for an American audience.
We were talking about that earlier with The Descent.
Yes.
And the American version, the alternate, which is actually the alternate version, right? Because it's not an American film. The American version pulls punches. And it's funny how the assumption is that we're just not ready for it here.
Right.
And I've told the story before where I accidentally watched the other Descent with my older sister one time, who doesn't really like horror movies, but I thought she would like The Descent because it's a great movie. And then in the end, it ends much more horribly in the British version, and she punched me so hard. She's a very big woman, and she hurt me. So I'm not going to risk. No, this is the bad ending. This is the scary ending.
Yeah, and the guy...
I'm not watching this with my sister. What I remember the most from watching it the first time, except how the ending just devastated me because I had no idea that that's what was coming, right? As most people when you watch the first time, that the last thing you think of. And so it just killed me. But is that when I watched it the first time, I was so disappointed in Saskia that she forgave him for abandoning her in that tunnel. I was like, wow, that was quick. Are you serious? Because you could have died in that tunnel. And then, of course, he knows that, and that's what drives him mad through the rest, as it ought to have driven him mad. That was a terrible thing to do to Saskia.
Yeah, and there's two stories that serve the inspiration for this movie. Again, the guy who wrote the book, Tim Krabbe, supposedly he based it on a newspaper article that he read about a female tourist who disappeared from a bus trip. at a gas station in France. But then he did extensive research and found that she actually turned up alive and well a day later.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah, well, that's one story. And then the other is that it's based on an urban legend, a French urban legend related to the Paris Exposition of 1901, where a woman and her daughter travel to Paris, and while the woman unpacks, the daughter goes to a nearby shop and then disappears. And that urban legend was used as the basis of a few movies like The Lady Vanishes, which we already mentioned. So either one or both of those could be true, but the inspiration behind this movie. You could see how both stories could work. It could be an urban legend, or you could see it's just an inspiration of maybe a newspaper article they'd read. Either way, it turned out pretty well.
It did. So what did you guys think?
Had you seen this before?
A long time ago, but what I love about it is how mundane everything seems to be about it. It seems very plain, almost is just a typical drama going forward until the horrible things start to happen, and that makes it all the more horrifying. It's almost like a dramatized episode of Unsolved Mysteries, which, have probably horrified many people in the audience here. Everything with Robert Stack. But what this movie really makes me think of is the Australian Peter Weir movie, Picnic at Hanging Rock.
Yes!
And just how matter-of-fact the disappearance is about it, and it leaves so much unsaid that makes it all the more scary. And, Picnic at Hanging Rock is not necessarily a horror film, but it gets under your skin and just really freaks you out. And this is the same way that, the original The Vanishing does as well.
I think that reminds me of the reason that we originally sought it out when we went to rent it years ago. I think it's because of just what he was talking about. Stanley Kubrick, I think it was, that listed it as one of his most terrifying films.
Well, that
and that might have been why we sought it out. But that's a good point. It is so mundane and terrifying.
Yeah, I think honestly the most chilling part to me is how it can almost happen to anyone. Like, just think about how many times your loved one is by themselves. It's funny. I saw this over a year ago. And then my girlfriend was going to go to Amsterdam in December for like 6 months to teach last year. And then I wanted to show her this movie because I really liked it. And then we got 5 minutes in and I think, no, maybe we shouldn't watch this, And so...
And how did the date end?
Pretty fine. We just kind of hung out. She still hasn't seen it. Probably a good thing. But yeah, just like thinking about how many times your loved ones are just not with you. It's a scary thought.
Yeah.
I think that they play on that when he has a kind of an argument with his next girlfriend, who's clearly a masochist, and she leaves and he just runs after her and like tackles her because you would, especially as haunted as he is, you would just not ever want the people you love out of your sight. Certainly not if it's your fault.
I like what you mentioned earlier. I really like the performance of the actor who played the killer. Just because, like you said, he was so normal, like you wouldn't suspect him at all. He's a family man as well. And just the fact that, he would be able to do all that stuff, it's just so, horrifying. And that ending, that part was only, a couple minutes long, and I was still, squirming in my seat.
Yeah, we should mention it. I'll try to pronounce it. Bernard Pierre Donadieu. Donadieu played Raymond. And you know what else bothered me at the very beginning? Did anybody else notice how many shirtless dudes there were? It didn't seem to be that warm. I mean, Rex was wearing a long-sleeve sweater, and every second guy that came past, if he didn't have his shirt off, he decided, I'm going to take my shirt off. And that just kind of...
It was the 80s in France, George. What do you want?
They love their nudity in France, don't they? Well, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody coming out. Great comments, by the way.
Yes, thank you so much.
This is certainly a movie that you can dissect.
Yes.
And talk about because it really kind of gets under your skin that way. Again, looking ahead to next month, it's going to be a Christmas extravaganza. We just don't know what the movie is yet. Got a couple where we're rolling around and see what Chris can get. So we hope to see you back here. Second.
Rare Exports. This is the one I want, by the way. Rare Exports is the one we hope that we get.
And
then we're going to do Santa Claus. That would be our theme.
And if not, maybe the anthology, A Christmas Horror Story.
That's right. That's
starring
another.
William Shatner.
Right. That could be our theme. Shatner is not going to be our theme.
It's not going to be that could be a second choice.
It's not going to be our theme.
We'll let you know, obviously, on madwolf.com or the socials, Mad Wolf Columbus on Facebook and Fright Club Pod on Twitter. If anybody doesn't have a Fright Club button, I got plenty. I see a few new faces here tonight. So afterwards, come down. We'd love to give you a Fright Club button. so you can stay frightful every day. So until next time, she's Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Stay frightful, my friends. Beautiful job. Beautiful job. All right, looking forward to some good comments afterwards. Enjoy the movie.